Imagine betting your survival on a calculation. Will what you preserve in autumn last through winter or run out just before spring? Preparing for winter meant engineering months of safety using nothing but earth, ice, and human labor, where a single 10% error could spell starvation for your family. Some communities built permafrost freezers that kept meat edible for 500 years. Others transformed root-filled soil into refrigerators colder and more reliable than today's pantries. How did they turn brutal environments into survival technology? And what forgotten knowledge are we missing if supply chains fail again? The answer begins where mistakes meant the difference between life and death. A single step into the Arctic winter means stepping into a world where the ground itself becomes the only reliable ally. In these latitudes, survival depended on mastering the cold, not just enduring it. The solution began with a pit. Dug 3.5 feet into the permafrost, lined with birch bark and layers of grass, the cache keeper shaped a chamber that would outlast any storm. Each decision mattered. The pit was placed on a hill for drainage, the lining set to keep out moisture and rodents. Every detail was the result of centuries of trial and error. Into this earthbound freezer went the real prize, seal meat rich with fat, each animal holding over 4,000 calories. In the Arctic, fat was life. A single seal could fuel a person for days, its energy burning hot enough to keep a body alive at -50 degrees Fahrenheit. Families needed thousands of calories a day just to avoid freezing. The cache was not just a place to store food. It was a promise that when the sun vanished for months, there would still be something to eat. Archaeologists have opened these pits centuries later and found the meat inside still preserved, still edible, still dense with fat. On Little Diomede Island, a cache 500 years old revealed seal flesh that thawed without rot, holding nearly 90% of its original fat content. No electricity, no metal, just earth, ice, and knowledge. The very environment that threatened life became the infrastructure that protected it. In the Arctic, winter was not conquered. It was negotiated, one cache at a time. 3 feet below the frost line, the Earth becomes an engineer. Here, temperature holds steady between 45 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit, no matter what chaos rages above. Across the northeast woodlands and northern Europe, families carved out these storage spaces with simple tools and a deep understanding of soil and season. The pit's shape mattered, rounded to shed water, never square to avoid pooling. Birch bark lined the walls, acting as a shield against moisture and hungry rodents. Over that, a thick layer of dried grass absorbed condensation, keeping everything inside dry and cool. On Viking farms, stone-lined earth houses worked on the same principle. Stones absorbed the chill of autumn nights, releasing it slowly through the long winter. These weren't just holes in the ground, they were carefully balanced systems. Slight elevation kept groundwater from flooding the cache. A vent, hidden among rocks or brush, allowed stale air and excess moisture to escape, stopping rot before it could start. The entrance was marked, sometimes with a carved post, sometimes just a memory passed down, so it could be found under snowdrifts 3 feet deep. Inside, the bounty from autumn's harvest waited in the dark. Baskets of dried beans, sacks of corn, roots and squash stacked in neat rows. The temperature never dipped low enough to freeze and ruin the food, nor high enough to invite spoilage. These cellars held the promise of spring. Every detail, from the bark lining to the placement on a hillside, was a lesson in microclimate management. The ground itself became a silent partner, holding the line against hunger one careful degree at a time. The river explodes with silver as the salmon run hits its peak. For 2 weeks, the banks transform into a blur of motion and noise. Each family faces the same impossible math. 400 to 600 fish must be caught, gutted, split, and preserved before the run ends. That means 40, sometimes 50 salmon a day, every day, with no breaks for weather or exhaustion. The smokehouse becomes the heart of the village. Inside, the air is thick with cedar and the sharp tang of fish. Elders with decades of experience oversee the fire. They know exactly how much wood to add, how to keep the smoke cool and steady. Too hot, and the fish will cook and spoil. Too little smoke, and mold will creep in by January. Knives flash in practiced hands, mostly women, their skill honed by years of repetition. Each salmon is opened, cleaned, and hung in a single motion. Children race back and forth, carrying fresh fish from the river and hauling split wood for the fire. The work never stops. Even at night, the smokehouse glows as elders check the racks, adjusting the airflow, testing the dryness of fillets by touch. Cedar smoke seeps into every surface, its phenols binding to the flesh and protecting it from bacteria. The result is protein that can last 6 to 8 months, stacked on shelves like currency against the coming cold. No one could do this alone. It takes a village moving in rhythm, every hand essential, every mistake a threat to survival. For those 2 weeks, the world shrinks to the size of the smokehouse and the relentless pace of the salmon sprint. On the rocky coastlines of northern Norway, winter survival relied on a different kind of calculation, one that replaced fire with wind. Here the cod arrive in staggering numbers as the coldest months close in. The work begins with the catch, but it is what happens next that makes this place legendary. Gutted and cleaned by practiced hands, each fish is hung by its tail on vast wooden racks that stretch across the Lofoten Islands. For 2 or 3 months, the Arctic wind and sub-zero air do what no amount of firewood could achieve. Day after day, the moisture is drawn out, leaving the fish hard and nearly weightless. By the end, each cod has lost 80% of its weight, but holds on to nearly all its protein. The rack keeper, often the same family for centuries, walks the rows in thick wool, checking each fish for the subtle signs of perfect drying. No fire is needed, no salt, just patience, wind, and cold. This is freeze-drying on a scale that would puzzle modern engineers. Properly made stockfish can last for years, sometimes 5 or more, without a hint of spoilage. In the Middle Ages, these dried cod became so valuable they were traded as currency, light enough to carry, strong enough to survive any journey. Lofoten racks have stood through storms and wars, their design unchanged for 1,000 years. Even today, the drying season is a ritual, with families like the Ellingsons maintaining the same sites their ancestors did. The brilliance lies in the simplicity, harnessing the relentless winter wind to turn a fleeting harvest into a stable reserve, all without burning a single stick of wood. When the world froze, these racks kept hunger at bay, proving that sometimes the best technology is knowing exactly when to let nature do the work. On the open grasslands, survival meant carrying your calories with you, not just for days, but for months, even years. Plains tribes perfected a food so dense and so durable, it became known as Pemmican. The process began with the hunt. A single buffalo, once skinned and butchered, offered up to 70 pounds of lean meat for drying. Strips were hung over racks, sun and wind pulling out every drop of moisture over 3 to 5 days. Once brittle, the meat was pounded to a powder, mixed by hand with rendered tallow, pure fat melted from the animal's own reserves, and when available, a handful of dried berries. The result was a heavy, compact cake that packed up to 3,500 calories per pound. No cooking required, no spoilage, no mold, even after years in storage. Pemmican's secret was its simplicity. Less than 5% moisture, sealed in fat, and fortified with berries that held enough vitamin C to ward off scurvy. One buffalo could yield 40 to 50 pounds of finished pemmican, enough to fuel a family through the hungriest months, or a hunting party on the move. It was food you could bury, forget, and dig up a decade later, still edible, still powerful. European traders and explorers quickly realized what they had found. In the early 1800s, the Hudson's Bay Company and Métis traders turned pemmican into the backbone of the fur trade, moving tons of it by canoe and sled across the continent. During the Pemmican War, entire fortunes and lives were gambled on these stores. The US Army tested pemmican in Arctic survival kits during World War II. NASA analyzed it for space missions, stunned by its stability and energy density. Modern disaster agencies still study it, searching for a ration that can match pemmican's shelf life and punch. For the Plains peoples, it wasn't just food, it was portable survival, engineered by hand and proven by centuries of winters. ROT, when guided by human hands, becomes a tool for survival. In a Viking farmhouse, a wooden barrel is packed tight with shredded cabbage and a heavy sprinkle of salt. The work is simple, but the reaction inside is anything but. Lactic acid bacteria, invisible to the eye, begin their slow takeover. As they feed on the sugars, they release acid, dropping the pH to levels where dangerous microbes cannot survive. No microscope, no laboratory, just taste, smell, and memory passed down through generations. The result is sauerkraut, crisp and sour, able to last 6 months or more in a barrel, holding enough vitamin C to keep scurvy at bay when the world outside is locked in ice. Milk too gets its transformation. Fresh from the cow, it would spoil in days, but when stirred with a touch of old skyr, the right bacteria multiply, thickening the milk and locking it away from decay. What started as a short-lived luxury now stretches through the winter, feeding families long after the grass has disappeared beneath snow. These foods are more than preserved calories. They are insurance against the slow starvation of late winter. Sauerkraut and skyr do not just fill bellies, they protect against disease, keeping bodies strong when fresh food is a memory. The craft is in the hands, the barrels, the quiet patience to let the right microbes win. Long before anyone could name lactic acid or draw a germ, these communities mastered the art of controlled rot, turning the threat of decay into a shield for survival. The first hard frost signals the start. There's no warning and no pause, just a week where every hour matters. On a Viking farm, the tally is brutal. 10, sometimes 15 animals, more than 2,000 pounds of meat, all needing to be processed before ROT can set in. The same story plays out across the grasslands and forests. Everywhere that winter means months of hunger if you fall behind. Men move through the pens at dawn, blades flashing in the cold air. The kill must be quick, the blood drained fast before it thickens. Women stand ready at the tables, hands red and steady, stripping fat and sorting cuts. Children haul buckets of water, wood for fires, armfuls of salt. Elders call the rhythm, watching for mistakes because a single slip can spoil an entire batch. There's no room for waste. Organs are eaten fresh, still warm. Bones are cracked and boiled for tools and broth. Fat is rendered down, poured into clay jars, set aside for the months when calories are worth more than silver. The best cuts are salted or smoked, destined for the deep of winter. Leaner scraps are dried on racks, while hides are scraped and stretched for clothing and shelter. Every part has a purpose. Every hand has a task. The days blur together. 12, sometimes 14 hours of work, broken only by quick meals and snatches of sleep. The air is sharp with the smell of blood, smoke, and salt. By the end of the week, the farm is transformed. Sheds and cellars are packed tight, racks are heavy with drying meat, and the ground is clean. There are no second chances. Everything that survives this week is what stands between the family and the long, dark months ahead. When the frost finally settles, the real calculation begins, not just with food, but with trust. In every community that faced a true winter, survival depended on a system of sharing as carefully engineered as any cache or smokehouse. If a family's pit flooded or a smokehouse fire went out at the wrong moment, the loss was not just personal, it risked rippling through the entire group. In the Arctic, a failed hunt meant the successful hunter divided his catch, not out of charity, but because next week the roles might reverse. Plains hunters set aside a portion of every kill, knowing that even the best tracker could have a season of bad luck. Among the Vikings, mutual aid agreements were formalized at the thing. Help your neighbor salt meat this year, and your own hands would be reinforced when your luck ran thin. This was more than kindness, it was insurance, paid not with coins but with calories and labor. The rules were clear. Hoarders risked not just hunger, but exile. One flooded cache, one failed smoke, and the only hope was the strength of your relationships. In these societies, the memory of a shared meal could mean the difference between life and death when the hunger moon arrived. Knowledge, too, was pooled and protected. Children apprenticed beside elders, learning the rhythm of the smokehouse or the secrets of the cache pit. Marriage alliances were built as much on food security as on kinship, weaving networks that could absorb disaster. Every technique, every recipe, every seasonal signal was passed hand to hand, mouth to ear. The result was a living community insurance policy, one that measured wealth not by what you could store, but by what you could share and teach. In a world ruled by winter, no one survived alone. Today, nearly 10% of the world still faces seasonal food insecurity, one bad harvest away from crisis. As climate shocks disrupt supply chains, ancient lessons become urgent warnings. Preparedness is not nostalgia, it is adaptation. Survival always hinges on knowledge shared and on risks managed together. The real famine is not food. The real famine is forgetting how to endure scarcity before it arrives. What would your winter look like if the stores stayed empty?